Let's just make sure everything is working. Here's the meat, I say no. Here's the potion, I say no. It's got the right text. 100 coins for 1,000 coins for a torch. Welcome back to Arcade. I am Super Tommy, and in this video, this is part 2 of the item shop in Phaser 3.50 video. We're making a Zelda-like item shop. So in part 1, we created this our character from our Dungeon Crawler series, Fawn over here. And then she can select items. So you see left off there, that's potion for 100 coins. Let's go over here. This is meat for 500, potion for 100. So what we have is a selector so that when our character is facing the actual item that she wants to select or buy, you know it, versus if you're using proximity or something, just because it's near doesn't mean the character is facing it. So with this setup, you can do it like it works in Zelda. And we're using the component-based system here, or a component pattern, where we've added the keyboard movement for the character and the animation input. The animation changes based on keyboard input as components, and our selection cursor component is what is allowing us to know what's being selected. Now, I've actually recorded this video more than once, but the sound has been not so good each time, and that actually is going to show you how well components separate code. So I didn't have to change too much of what I did to go back to a state after part 1, the previous video in the series, to basically redo the logic to add a dialog. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to add a dialog that comes up at the bottom here when our character selects a item here. For example, this meat. A dialog is going to come up, ask, do you want to buy meat for 500 coins? You can do yes or no, and then it'll go away after a selection is made. So we're going to do that in this video. So let's get started. I'll make myself smaller. Let's go here. So first thing we're going to do to make this dialog is we're going to make a new container. So this is our item shop scene. And so let's just make a container. So we're going to just add one. So this dot add dot container, because we're going to put buttons in there, or like just text to denote yes or no on the buy question, and show some text if you want to buy. So I'll add a container, and we're going to add it at, let's say x is 0, since containers are generally 0, 0 is going to be the top left corner. And then as the height, we're going to do this dot scale dot height, just do 80% height down. Can adjust that. So no children, nothing. Okay, so this is going to be our dialog box game object. And with our component pattern, so you're not going to see anything after I do this. Let me just save. And that should refresh, right? We don't see anything, but our dialog box is made. Now with our component pattern, we can just add components that have different logic to our dialog box game object. So this is just a game object. It's a container which inherits from phaser.gameobjects.gameObject. So let's make a new component here in our components folder. So we had our selection cursor component here. Let's make a new one, and we're going to call it dialogbox.ts. Now, just like our selection cursor, let's just look at this. We're implementing our I component interface. So let's dialog box. So export default class dialog box implements I component. Let's just fix these imports, since I'd like the single quote. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, single quote. So we have init that we need to use, which is going to be, in our case here, well, we know that it's going to be a container. Although I think I need to, yeah, that's fine. So we can do private game object phaser.gameobjects.container. This dot game object gets game object. Get go. Okay, so now we have that done. That's just set up for our component. Let me just check some notes here. And so what we want to do when this component starts is we want to add a background. So let's go to awake. So our components have awake, start, and update. Let's go to awake here. Just check this component interface here. Awake, optional, start, optional, update, optional, and destroy, optional. So for more information about how this component is set up, refer to our component video. We'll link to it in the description box below. So just know that awake gets called before start, and then update gets called each time. Start only gets called one time, same as awake, but update gets called each time during the update loop. And destroy gets called at the end when your game object is destroyed, or when your component is destroyed, which usually happens when you destroy the scene. Okay, so back to our dialog box. So awake here. So let's get our scene. We're going to have to make a image or a rectangle that's a specific color. So we do that. So now let's just do bg scene.add.rectangle. Just put it at 0, 0 of this container. And then we're going to do, let's just say width is going to be scene.scale.width, so the width of the actual game window. And then let's say it's 150 pixels. Now we can go to a color picker to select a fill color, but I actually already have one, so let me just take that. It's going to be like a brown. It's not super pretty. Now we have our background, our BG, so let's add it to our container. So we do this.gameObject, which is our container. So we're putting this component onto our container GameObject dot add BG. Let's look at it. This should refresh. Did my changes? Oh no, right. So we made our component. We did not attach it. Nothing works until we attach components to game objects. So back here, we can do this.components.add component. And in our case, it's dialog box this time, and then new dialog box component takes nothing in the constructor for now. Good. Okay. Let's see. It set origin. No, set origin. Oh, right. We want to set the origin on the other thing here. On our background image, dot set origin 0 to be top left. And there we go. Okay, so here's our dialog background. Next, we're gonna need to put some text in here. Let's just do this. Scene.add.text. Let's see, bg.width. We're just gonna say the text width is 70% of the total width of our background. And then we're gonna put 2 buttons on the side next to it. There's that, okay. So there's that. And then Y, let's just say 20 pixels down. Let's see. X, wait, bg.width 0.70. Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong thing. Looking at the wrong notes. We're putting our text at 1010. I'm just gonna be right here. Over here. 1010, and then with nothing in there, let's just do some demo text. Text goes here. And same thing, we want to add this text to our game object, which is the container. All right, great, text goes here. Now we want to add some buttons. So the buttons is actually what's going to be, so let's go OK text is going to be our button. So this is going to be what we want at 70% of our text, or sorry, of our width. So we should here set word wrap as well. Set word wrap width, which is going to be bg.width times 0.7. So 70% of our width of the background. So here we're adding a button. It's actually text width. And we're going to just say this. Text width. And here we're going to have where that button starts. So probably text.x plus text width. So it's whatever, it's 10 plus the total word wrap width of this text. So it's gonna be somewhere over here roughly. I'm gonna put our buttons over here. So that, and then 20, could also add some spacing here if we want. We may want that. So y is 20. So yes. So that's our yes button, the OK text. And let's give it a background color so that we can see it. And so let's see, we have a color selected already. Let's just copy that over here. Background color is this. And you can do, that's text, this. Okay, now let's also add this game object, OK text. And here it is. And let's just make it, maybe 20 is too much. Let's go with 10. Yeah, there we go. We'll put no maybe right here. And then let's do a no text. Scene.add.text. So it'll still be text. Let's just go with OK text.x. So it's going to be aligned here in the same spot where yes is. And then we're going to do for y, OK text.y plus OK text.height. And maybe we're going to add 5 pixels for spacing. And then our text is going to be cancel. And I'm going to add this to our game object as well. This is our no text. Cancel. Cool. So now let's also add a background color, and we can just make it the same. Okay. Awesome. So we have that, so that's good. And now because this is going to be largely a keyboard game, right? And now I've been calling these buttons, but really we're just gonna, we could do them as buttons, but it doesn't make as much sense as it does just for keyboards. So we're actually going to use keyboard Y and N for yes and no on these. You can also make them clickable. That just, you can just do this. Dot set interactive dot on, and then the whole phaser dot input, dot events, dot game object pointer up, right? You can do all that. We've gone over that in other videos. In this one, we're going to do full keyboard controls. So let's just do, in both cases, we're going to close the dialog. So let's just put this in scene.input.keyboard.on. We want key up Y, and this game object dot Y, we're going to set that to scale.height. So that just means the Y position goes all the way down here, so you just won't see it. So that's how we're hiding it. And then scene.input.keyboard.on, so that's for what? Yes. This is going to be for no. And we're going to do the same thing. Now we'll fill these in with some more logic later. So now let's give it a try here. Yes, and it goes away. Let's refresh. No, and it also goes away. Fantastic. So we have that. We have our player. So of course now we want to do is when we actually select, so when we press space here, and this little console log we have in our selection cursor over here, we need to change this so that our dialog box knows about it. So there's a few ways that we can go about this. So for this video and in this particular series, we're going to do an approach where our selection cursor component is going to emit events. It doesn't know who cares about it, but it's just going to emit events. And then our dialog box is going to take in a reference to our selection cursor and listen to these events that the selection cursor is going to emit. So let's just show you, and it'll make some more sense. So first thing, let's make an event emitter on our selection cursor. So let's come up here, private read only, let's call it events. And it's going to be of type new phaser.events.event emitter. So this is just the wrapped event emitter 3 that Phaser uses. Now instead of this, we're going to do this.events.emit, and we're going to call this, let's just call this interaction, and or maybe selection. Doesn't matter. This is all internal to this class, and we're going to do this.selected item. And then for it to be listened to, we're going to do an on interaction handler, let's say, oops. And it's going to take a callback, and what that callback is going to have is a item. It's going to take an item which is of type selected item. Just that. It's going to return void, pass in an optional context of type any, and that's our callback. That's good. And then, so this.events.on interaction, we're going to listen to this callback, this context. Now we'll also want a way to remove ourselves from this event. And so one way, a short, easy way to do it, we're going to return a function that does the inverse of this, which is instead of on, does off. So when whoever wants to call on interaction passes in a callback, it'll get back a function that it can call whenever it decides, later on, that it no longer cares about these on interaction events. Call that function and it'll just unsubscribe itself from that event. Okay, now let's go to our dialog box and let's make a constructor, and we're going to pass in to our constructor let's call it a trigger. Now the obvious thing to do is to type it selection cursor, but that does make it more tightly coupled, and our components theoretically don't have to know about each other. Now if we did selection cursor here, then they of course very much know about each other and sort of need each other, so we don't really want that. So what we're going to do instead is create a type. Let's go to our source folder, make a new folder, let's call it types, and we're going to make a new file. I'll just call it types.ts, and we're going to put a type here, and this type is going to be I with interaction callback, export interface. And what this is going to have here is an on interaction method that takes a callback that gives you an item, just like that. Right? Item can be shared. It just defines what an item is, and we only want the type of it, item, and it's gonna return null or void. It's a function that returns void, context any. So let's collapse this. So save. So you see this signature, this on interaction signature, looks exactly like the selection cursor on interaction method we just made. And that's intentional because we're going to implement this interface in selection cursor. Right? So it implements I component and it can implement any number of other components. So I with interaction callback, there it is. And of course, your project may not work with the tilde, so you can just do that. And so now it implements this interface using this thing that we just did here. And now, instead of passing a selection cursor type into trigger, we can pass in an I with interaction callback. So it's any object. So this dialog box won't care what it is. So it's going to be loosely coupled to whatever other components that it may want. All it cares is that it adheres to this I with interaction callback, so that it can call on trigger, on interaction, give it a callback, and then respond to those events as they come in. So here we have that. So we can do trigger.onInteraction. Now we're going to give it a callback to just say this.handle item interaction, let's say. And then the context is this. So let's make this method here. So private, we're going to get an item. It's good. Now let's just make sure this works. We're going to console.log item.name. Okay, now we have this error here since in our item shop scene we didn't pass one in. So what we want is this selection cursor. So to make it easy, we can just come up here, selection cursor, get a reference to it, pass that in here in the add component, and then pass that through here in our dialog box. So now we have it structured, and there it goes. So now, just double check. So here we got rid of this console log, we added this submit. So if everything was right, we should log the name. And there we go. So now they're communicating with each other. We get the item that was selected in our dialog box component. So now let's come back here. So now we have information. We can actually update our text here to actually show what we are buying. So let's set our text here as a class property first. Let's come up here, private text. We can just say, trust me, this exists, text. And then we do this.text. And well, it's just for ease. Just set all that and then do this.text text. And then what we can do is this.text.text. We're going to say, would you like to buy a item.name for item.price of coins? And let's see what that does. Cool. So that wraps, and that's all nice. Let's look at meat. Great. So that wraps better. So now we do want the dialog to start start off screen, or not start closed. Then we want to open the dialog. That's what we want to do. So here in awake, so we create all that stuff. That's great. This .game object. Let's actually add a private open and a private close. Now you'll also see here that open and close, while obviously exists for dialogues, could also exist for other things. So we will take these out into a separate component as well. We'll do that in the next video. But for now, let's just keep it in here. So we already know that close is this. And right, let's get the scene here. And so open would be that height times 0.8 as we have it. So that's good. And now we can just say this dot close. This dot close. Yeah. And when we do this, we want to do this dot open. And when we start at awake, we can call this dot close. Okay, so it starts off correct. Potion, and brings up our dialog. We can say, no, I don't want the potion. Go to the meat. Yes, I want the meat. We're not handling that right now, but we will handle it here for you. And for that, we're actually just going to do console.log here. Let's say purchased. Blah. So we actually need to also store the item that we have here. So let's actually store that. So private selected item, and this could be null or undefined. And then here, this dot selected item gets item, open, good purchased. This dot selected item dot name for this dot price coins. And actually, if not this dot selected item, just don't do anything. Then we can get rid of these question marks. This is the optional chaining operator. So we're actually going to leave this part to you, what you want to do. So what you'll probably want to deduct coins from your character's wallet. add this item to their inventory or something like that. Depends on your game, but you'll do it right there where that console.log is. So yes, purchased potion for 100 coins. Maybe you want to remove from the store. Depends on your game. You can also do that. So we have that dialog. Let's just make sure everything is working. Here's the meat. I say no. Here's the potion. I say no. It's got the right text. 100 coins for 1,000 coins for a torch. That. So let's just briefly show you before this time's up on this video, how to do a comma on that 1,000. So there should be a simple way in JavaScript here. .to, I believe this will do it. I could be wrong. Let's see. 100, still good. 500, also good. 1,000, and there's our comma. So there we go. So that was creating a dialog in your item shop store scene. So in the next video, we're going to add a typewriter effect so that you don't just get this text immediately. We're going to add a little tween to our open and our close so that it'll sort of animate up and then animate down when we open and close it. So we'll have our typewriter effect, and we'll have our open and closed animations, and we're going to show you how to split this open and close logic into its own components, and this is something that can be shared with other things that you want to create that can open or close in any number of different ways. So if you enjoyed this video, do be sure to hit like and hit subscribe for more videos on making games on the web with Phaser 3.50 and other web technologies.